His book is radical in that he acknowledges the true undercurrent and true realities of the world, and is both a bemoaning on his part of the likely problems tied to current worldwide demographic trends, and it's a presentation of solutions that he believes have a chance at changing the direction of the world. I also don't agree with all of his trends, and, well, it's more the underlying premise of his trends. But anyway, but he has these ideas, solutions that he sees as allowing them to change the direction and get humanity off a path that he sees as detrimental to humanity and overall enlightenment. So the following excerpt from his book rather sums up his view of the presented direction of humanity, and it's on page 34 in his book. It is titled "The Coming Mutation." And please notice that this is given in the context of a great many hard facts. I really wish I could give everybody access to this book, to the whole book, so you could see the numbers and the arguments for yourself. You can read segments of this on the internet. I think Google Books has stuff that you can read. But here's the quote. It says, "In the modern urban economy, children may provide pride, joy, and companionship, but so do pets, and their cost is much cheaper, particularly if you value the type highly. As we shall see in Chapter 7, the economic burden to parents of raising a typical middle-class child in the United States through age 18 now exceeds $1 million in direct costs and foregone wages. In today's highly mobile societies, grandmothers and older family members are unlikely to help with child care. At the same time, the economy requires ever higher endowments of human capital, to the point that a professional woman is unlikely to have completed her education before her prime childbearing years are already behind her. Yet, despite their investment, parents receive an ever-diminishing share of human capital they help form in the next generation. Thanks to programs like Social Security, which redistribute the next generation's income to parents and non-parents alike, nor thanks to the spread of education and the mass media, can parents, except perhaps for homeschoolers, exert much influence over their children's values as compared with parents in the past. No wonder, then, that the most educated and most materially successful members of modern society are those least likely to have children. If evolutionary biologists spotted such a pattern in any other species, say a colony of penguins in which, for some reason, those males and females best able to feed themselves exhibited high rates of infertility, what would they make of it? They would pronounce that this colony is either on the road to extinction or on the threshold of a dramatic mutation. I hope these quotes will not be dismissed simply because of whatever views you may have, or whoever's watching this, whatever views they may have of the world or common perceptions. I, again, really wish everybody could actually have the book in their hand and would take the time to look over it. Here are some facts that are brought up by Mr. Longman in connection with the demographic collapse. First of all, by 2050, Mexico, Brazil, and Turkey will all have an older population on average, an older average population age than will the U.S. That's pretty astounding to me. Iran, Mexico, and Turkey aren't exactly, what you consider when you think about enlightened Western powers, but they will have older average populations than the U.S. Presently, right now, Iran's fertility rate is below replacement levels. That means Iran's fertility has dropped, within the past decade, just massively. By 2050, China could be losing 20 to 30% of its population per generation. That's massive, especially when you consider that China's, over a quarter of the world's population. And then over the next 50 years, India's population will be aging 3 times the rate of the U.S. In support of the continuation of this trend, he cites a lack of precedence of this trend of humanity not being as likely to have children. He He cites a lack of precedence for the impetus currently driving the demographic implosion. I'll read now from page 87 in this chapter titled The Cost of Children, and in the subheading, A Handmaid's Tale. It says, with the benefit of hindsight, we can see how anomalous the post-war baby boom phenomenon was. In the United States, fertility rates have fallen almost without interruption since 1810. After the baby boom peaked in 1957, fertility rates simply returned to their long-term downward trend. Though we can expect slight increases in the fertility rate from time to time, there simply is no reason to expect any reversal of the larger downward tendency without a dramatic change in the economics of parenthood and in institutional arrangements. As the experience of more and more nations shows, there is no law of nature ensuring that humans will create enough children to replace any given population. When the economic and social incentives to procreate and raise families are weak or negative, as they increasingly are in most nations, and when people know how to achieve sexual gratification without producing children, we have no reason to assume that birth rates won't continue to fall below replacement levels. Now, I want to move to the idea of memes. For those unfamiliar with the term, I found out recently that I haven't been familiar with it enough with it to pronounce it correctly. I suppose that's what happens when you get a lot of your information just from reading and don't take enough time to check dictionaries, pronunciation guides. Mimetics, I'm still not sure how to pronounce that, memetics or mimetics. It's supposed to be similar to genetics. The concept made popular by Dawkins as a way of talking about ideas and the nature of their transmission. It's tied to the word gene to demonstrate the nature of the evolution of ideas and concepts, as it seems to closely mirror the nature of genetics. From generation to generation, ideas or memes can change and seemingly adapt. Often they become almost unrecognizable with relation to their origins, just as you can seemingly get in some genetic evolution. And now, to tie the idea of memes to my overall point, I go to the segment in this book again, titled The Coming Mutation in the Empty Cradle, and this is just a continuation of where I left off from that first quote. It says, if human population does not wither away in the future, it will be because of a mutation of human culture. Again, this is tying in with the whole concept of memes. On our current course, more and more of the world's population will be produced by people who believe they are, or who in fact are, commanded by a higher power to procreate, or who just lack the foresight to avoid the social and economic cost of creating large families. Such a higher power might be God, speak through Abraham, Jesus, Muhammad, or some Latter-day Saint. He didn't say that capitalized, so I don't think he intended that to refer to Mormons, but it is interesting. I just noticed that. Anyway, or it might be a totalitarian state. Either way, for better or for worse, such a trend, if sustained, would drive human culture off its current market-driven, individualistic, modernist course and gradually create an anti-market culture dominated by fundamentalist values. Again, I don't completely agree with absolutely everything he's saying, but seem far-fetched? Not since the fall of the Roman Empire has the world ever experienced anything on the scale of today's loss of fertility, as sociologist Rodney Stark demonstrated in his well-respected book on the rise of Christianity. At that time, Christians had marginally higher birth rates than pagans and practiced less infanticide. They also enjoyed better life expectancy, and most likely in part because, in tight-knit early Christian communities, those infected by the various plagues of the era were less likely to be abandoned. The resulting demographic advantage, Stark argues, slowly transformed the marginal Jesus movement into the dominant culture force of the Western world. As Christian communities gradually outbred and outlived their pagan counterparts, demographic conditions today suggest that a cultural transformation in similar proportions may be in store if secularists increasingly avoid the growing economic cost of raising children, while fundamentalists of all stripes do not. Unlike in the past, however, today's loss of fertility is not caused by war, famine, plague, or some other passing catastrophe.